Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12 o'clock sharp on Thursday, February 9th, 2023, and I'm calling to order the virtual meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I'm Ashay Jackson, chair of this commission. I'm very excited to be chairing my first meeting today, and so I'm looking forward to how that goes. And as we start today, I'd like to send special thanks to Commissioners Carrillo and Canales for their leadership the past 2 years, and I extend a very warm welcome to our new leadership team, Vice Chair Kakani and Secretary Garcia-Lays, as we continue the work before us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Wendy, our Executive Director, to explain how you can participate in the meeting, and then she'll call roll for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair Jackson, and welcome to your tenure here as chair. I will first say happy February. It's my favorite month of the year, 28 days. We celebrate Love Black History Month and the Probation Oversight Commission's 2-year anniversary. So we had our first meeting February 22nd, 2021. And since the beginning, public participation has been our main goal. And that is, in fact, really a big part of why we were created, is to listen to your comments and get your information and then provide a window of transparency and accountability to the department and act as a liaison between the department and the board. You'll have a chance to comment on each agenda item and at the end of the meeting today for items not on the agenda. For each item on the agenda, Chair Jackson will introduce the item. You will hear any presentation that there's to be heard. Then we'll take public comment before the commission discusses and takes action on the item. If you're pre-registered to speak, we have your name already and we'll call your name. But if you could help us by still raising your hand, it makes it easier for us to find you. If you want to speak on an item and did not pre-register, you just tap on the little raise your hand icon at the bottom of the screen. And that will raise your hand and we can see your name and call on you. If you're calling in, you can also raise your hand by pressing *3 on your phone. That makes it look like your phone number has its hand raised. Once we call on you with your phone number, you have to press *6 to unmute yourself and begin your comment. Everyone will have 2 minutes today unless Chair Jackson determines otherwise based on the number of commenters. If you want to make your comment in writing, please send us an email to info@poc.lacounty.gov. Janae just put that in the chat. But please do not send your public comment or any comments in the chat. Only Janae sees it, and that doesn't get logged as public comment. The panelists and the commissioners don't see the chat, and it doesn't comport with the Brown Act. If you have any technical problems, like you can't figure out how to raise your hand, please put that in the chat, and Janae can help you with that. Our meeting is being broadcast live today to Facebook. You can watch on Facebook Live, but we don't engage with users there. You can follow our social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at LA County POC for information about meetings and educational content. Please invite other folks to attend. We also have a YouTube account. You can watch the full meeting if you want to, or clips that are created. Le damos una cordial bienvenida a personas en la comunidad quienes prefieren hacer sus comentarios en español. Les daremos 4 minutos y proveeremos traducción al inglés si quiere. Usted propio puede traducir o proveer su traductor. Nomás al iniciar su comentario, avísenos que prefiere hacer su comentario en español y bienvenidos. I'm going to call the roll, and I'm looking at faces here because I know we have a few people who are joining us a few minutes late. Commissioners, if you can unmute yourselves. Commissioner Canales?
Here, thank you.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays, I believe, is joining us in a few minutes, so we will note that in the minutes when he arrives. Commissioner Kakani?
Here.
Commissioner Lewis is also joining us in a few minutes. Commissioner Meredith?
Here.
And Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
Okay, Chair Jackson, we have quorum, and I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. I think it's good to proceed with item number 2, which is the approval of the January 26th meeting minutes. Do we have any written or live public comment for this item?
No comments and no hands raised.
All righty. Can we have get a motion to approve those minutes? Sorry, did someone raise their hand?
I didn't raise my hand, but I went off mute. Happy to move for those minutes.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Vice Chair Kakani, first motion by Vice Chair Kakani.
I'd like to move for the minutes to be approved from the January 26, 2023 meeting.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Meredith. Thank you both. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with a voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any oppositions, abstentions? Seeing and hearing none, motion carries unanimously. So it's safe to move on to agenda item number 3, which have quite a bit to say about the commission candidates that we've met with recently, in which we'll take some time to discuss and take any necessary action on 2 at-large commissioner recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The POC staff subcommittee made of myself, Commissioner Canales, and Commissioner Carrillo received and reviewed many applications. The applicants, shared a lot of insight and held very, very impressive backgrounds. We decided to interview the top 6. Interview participants included in the subcommittee include justice deputies, as well as staff members. Although staff members did not participate in the ranking and scoring of the process, they were present. The subcommittee then met with and reviewed scores, agreed to recommend Dr. Diane Terry and Mr. Eduardo Muno for the appointment to the at-large positions on the POC, which we're pretty thrilled about. So their biographies are attached to the agenda, but I'd like to just share a few things about them that I found especially impressive. And so for Mr. Eduardo Mundo, he's a very well-known voice at the POC meetings and has been deeply involved with the PRIT meetings and previous probation commission. Before that, he spent his entire career with the LA County Probation Department, serving in multiple roles, but his heart is really with the young people, and I think that's something that was really impressed upon us in this process. I will say that initially I questioned whether Mr. Eduardo Mundo would be able to maintain objectivity with all of his years of experience within the department, but I was truly blown away by how fair and passionate, knowledgeable, but also really curious and committed to learning that he appeared to be as we met with him through this process. So we thank him for that. We also thought that his values are based on best practices around research and evidence-based outcomes. And I especially appreciate his welfare and institution code savvy. And so we believe that his vast experience with probation and passion for probation reform is just much needed voice on the POC. So we are very, very excited to strongly consider him for that position and submit that recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. We also met Dr. Diane Terry, who is a senior research associate at the Psychology Applied Research Center at Loyola Marymount. She is an esteemed author and researcher in the field of juvenile justice. Dr. Terry is passionate about using research and evaluation to strengthen, inform, advance policies, and the interview with her was extremely impressive. Her deep desire to listen to people most closely impacted by the system we're working to improve truly made her shine as a candidate, and we would just be so fortunate to have her perspective, her skills, and expertise added to the commission. So I just like to spend a couple minutes sharing a little bit about those candidates. And Wendy, maybe we can go to live or written public comment if we have any.
Thank you. Please raise your hand if you'd like to make public comment. I don't believe we have any written public comment, right, Janae?
That is correct.
Okay, I don't see any hand raised. If you click on the little hand icon or dial *3 on your phone, we'll call on you for public comment. But I don't see any public comment on this, Chair Jackson.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments from you before we proceed to a vote? Don, you're up.
On the old probation commission, Mr. Mundo would show up quite regularly, have a lot of good information for us to provide. I believe his heart's in the right place. But he, like I say, he at times can be adversary, but he does have information. I do believe he cares about the youth. I just want to remind the commission that as a whole, we also have to oversee the adult side. So as we look at future commissioners, we need to consider that.
Absolutely, Commissioner Meredith. That's something that we discussed quite a bit in the interview process and are looking forward to sort of expanding a lot of our efforts when we start to map out our strategic plans. So Any other commissioners with comments? I'll take that as a good sign, right? Because maybe all of us just agree that these are really strong contenders and they would be value adds to the commission. Commissioner Canales, you're up.
Yes, I would just like to say there was some amazing interviews and being a part of it. And, I'm really thankful for all those that put forth an application, especially those with direct lived experience and just awesome, awesome individuals in the community that they serve, the true passion and commitment. And, hope to see even those that did apply and not get the position, hopefully be involved.
For sure. It definitely was not easy landing on, the two candidates that we picked. Obviously, we could only pick two. And based on the scores that everyone in the subcommittee came up with, the top scores that's what we landed on. I will say that in our subcommittee meetings, after we decided who those last people were, that we would like to consider the other candidates who applied for the POC position in advisory capacities. We still need to kind of figure out what that is and what that could look like, but we definitely don't want to lose that really valuable perspective. I understand that we met with a lot of great people that we want to continue to work with more intimately, preferably. So. Anyone else? I don't see any other hands up. And so, Wendy, I think we can move forward with the vote. Can you facilitate for us?
I think someone should make a motion, and I think we should probably do it separately, just for it to be clear on the record. So we need one motion for accepting Dr. Diane Terry and one motion for accepting Eduardo Mundo. And I'll just add that the process here is that this is a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who will make the final decision on the appointment. And that will hopefully go on the board agenda on February 28th.
Looks like Frankie's raising his hand. Commissioner Carrillo, is that a motion?
So I motion to recommend Eduardo Mundo to the POC.
Wonderful, thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Canales, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you. Wendy, can you get us a vote
I
going?
will, and I'll also note, also please for the minutes, Janae, that Commissioner Gonzales has joined us. So we are voting on Chair Carrillo. Sorry, Commissioner, that's my slip. Commissioner Carrillo's motion, seconded by Commissioner Canales, to recommend Eduardo Mundo to fill an at-large commissioner position. Please vote when I call your name. Commissioner Canales,
Aye.
Commissioner Carrillo,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays,
Aye.
Commissioner Kakani.
Aye.
I don't see that Commissioner Lewis has joined us yet. Is that right, Janae?
That's correct.
Thank you. Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Lewis absent.
Fabulous. I think I'll just say before we move on to Dr. Terry's vote, I think as much as Eduardo Mundo is engaged, he's probably visiting this meeting as a participant, and he's probably very pleased to see that we voted in favor of him being voted on by the Board of Supervisors. So thank you for that. Moving on to the vote for Diane Terry. Does someone want to place a motion to vote for her? Commissioner Carrillo?
I recommend that we, I motion that we recommend Diane Terry to join the POC.
Thank you for that. A second by,
I'll second that.
okay. Vice Chair Kakani, thank you for that. Wendy, can we gather a vote, please?
Yes. So on our motion by Commissioner Carrillo and seconded by Commissioner Kakani, you're voting to recommend Dr. Diane Terry to fill an at-large commissioner position in the POC. Commissioner Canales,
Aye.
Commissioner Carrillo,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia Leyes,
Aye.
Commissioner Kakani,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
and Chair Jackson.
Yes.
Okay, so with Commissioner Lewis being absent, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Chair Jackson. We will submit their names to the Board of Supervisors for consideration and appointment.
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy. We are now going to move on to item number 4, which is to discuss and take any necessary action on the plan to return to in-person meetings beginning March 1st, 2023. Our Executive Director, Wendy Julian, and County Council Representative Stephen Edwards are here to elaborate on this item. We'll leave it to you too.
Thank you. So this is new for the Probation Oversight Commission, since we were created and launched during the COVID pandemic and have been under the governor's emergency order since the inception of the POC and been able to meet virtually for our meetings. That state of emergency ends at the end of February, and that means that we get to go in person for our meetings and meet all of you in person. There are a few rules about the Brown Act meetings that many of you are very well aware of, as you participate in lots of Brown Act meetings and have long before the pandemic, but I'll share a few of those and also a few changes that apply specifically to the commissioners about how you can participate. I want to say first that our team, like I said at the beginning, takes very seriously the opportunities, availability, and ease with which the public can participate in our meetings. And we want to continue to encourage people to attend both in the physical space where we will be meeting as well as in the virtual space. And we are working hard to make that as easy as possible. One of the things that we are doing is trying to mimic as much as we can without the incredible team that the Board of Supervisors has, what the Board of Supervisors does. So that means that we will have in-person meetings where you can come and give in-person comment. Also, you'll be able to stream the meetings and watch and be a part of the meeting virtually without participating. You can do that live while the meeting has happened or after the meeting. And then perhaps most importantly, we want to provide the continued opportunity for people to call in to make public comment if they're watching the stream and not able to participate. So those are all in plans. We're investing in the equipment and practicing, and I'm very thankful to Ismael Chinchilla on our team who's making that happen. So there are some requirements with the Brown Act that are the same and some that are slightly different. So we will, what this means is that all the commissioners who participate in the meeting have to be at the posted public location. So we have been talking a lot about the opportunities for where we will meet. I will tell you, we're having some trouble actually finding locations. We have a couple of locations that we have reserved for March and April meetings, including St. Anne's, which is in Los Angeles, a beautiful conference room at an SCRTP. And then also some rooms available at the Hall of Administration. As we go forward, I think we can get a more official, formal meeting space, depending on how this all plays out, with you all deciding what works best in terms of location. So at least a quorum of the body must be at the location's physical meeting. And so in our case, with 9 commissioners, that would mean we'd have to have at least 5 people that are there and participating from the jurisdiction. That means that if one of you is traveling in Hawaii, you can participate in the meeting by teleconferencing, but you cannot, we can have 5 of you participating from Hawaii. Also the agenda, if you want to participate from another location within the jurisdiction, must be posted. So for example, if we wanted to have a meeting that we were holding at the Hall of Administration, but there was a public library where Commissioner Gonzales wanted to be because she had a meeting before or after, we could post the meeting date and time for the public location where Commissioner Gonzales would be taking the meeting, as long as there's also the opportunity for the public to come and be part of the meeting with her at that location. So the one exception for that is this just cause reason for teleconferencing. So it would be a reason why a commissioner would need to participate via telephone or via WebEx virtually And those just cause reasons including the child care or caregiving of a child, parent, grandparent, sibling, spouse, domestic partner that requires participation remotely, a contagious illness. Please don't come to the public meeting if you have a contagious illness, a need related to physical or mental disability, travel while on business of the body or another state or local agency. And in order to appear remotely, you have to notify the legislative body at us at the earliest opportunity and provide a general description of the circumstances. And you can only do this twice per year. So I think that what this basically means is that absent urgent circumstances, the commissioners have to be in person, and people who want to make public comment can participate in person or remotely. Stephen, is there anything that you feel like I have missed in that explanation?
No, I think you covered it, and I appreciate the level of detail too, because I think the commissioners might want to know that. And I think what we would suggest to the commissioners is that if something arises and you think you're going to need to request to be able to appear virtually, please reach out to Wendy or to me, and we can make sure that your participation complies with the Brown Act.
Okay, so we have, as I said, reserved St. Anne's for our 2 March meetings, centrally located in Los Angeles. There's parking available and accessible via public transportation. And then standing reservations at the HOA for at least the last Thursday of the month for 2023. We have a list of other alternatives, and staff will be working with Commissioner Garcia-Lays to make decisions about those and find the locations that are most conducive to community participation. So with that, do you want me to see if we've got public comment? Chair
Sure.
Jackson?
Sure, I'd like to especially hear from any public participants who are looking forward to visiting us or spending time with us in person.
We would love to hear what you think about where we should meet. If you want to raise your hand, if you're on the phone, dial *3. We have lots of people in the audience today and they're very quiet. No public comment on this issue. Oh, we do have one. James Maddox has raised his hand. Sorry, I didn't scroll down, James. James, we're going to unmute you. He still shows up as muted on my end. There we go.
There you go.
James, you can begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. I like Zoom. I like being away. And then I am a skeptic. I'm an iconoclast, but I'm a skeptic. Are you going to do anything about ensuring that people are vaccinated? I just got a real problem with that one. That's all.
I think that there actually is something with respect to that changed recently, Stephen, but I'm not sure. I certainly don't know enough to speak about it. I don't know whether you do, about masking and vaccination rules at public meetings.
No, I don't, but the POC will presumably have to follow the same rules that the board does. So we'll double check on that to make sure that you're following the appropriate public health guidance. But I don't know it in detail to sort of comment on it right now.
We will definitely look into that, about what the recommendations are and what the rules are. Thank you for bringing that up. And that looks like the end of public comment, Chair Jackson.
Okay. Commissioners, anything from you? Commissioner Canales, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Yes, thank you for your report back, Wendy. I was really glad to hear that the vicinity you found so far has plenty of free public parking and also access to transportation. Will that be like a bullet point priority in all the locations that are going to be found? The parking, free, and public access?
Yeah, I think it's centrality and accessibility in terms of public transportation and parking is key. Basically, all the spaces we look at are going to cost us something, but we have a budget for those locations. So we're looking to make sure that we can encourage the most participation possible.
And is the POC allowed to use spaces like at Homeboy Industry or Youth Justice Coalition, community spaces that already have a base?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Any other commissioners with comments here? Commissioner Carrillo?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I guess this is maybe more for Wendy, but are we, I made a comment before, I'm not sure if it was private or public, but are we thinking about rotating these meetings around the county versus having one specific hub? Maybe you might have said that, Wendy, but I missed it.
I actually think that's a better question for your colleagues. Chair Jackson, I know, has some thoughts about that, and so does Commissioner Garcia-Leyes.
Yeah, I think we sort of discussed that since we've been doing the meetings virtually for 2 years now and going back to in person or starting in person, we want to give it some time and just see how that works out for us before we start shifting around the county. We absolutely will go to other locations so that, the meetings are accessible to, people who want to participate around the county. But for now, as we're sort of learning the new ropes, understanding what we're able to do, what we're not able to do, and also get a feel for, participating in meetings in person, then we wanted to maybe give that some more time before we decide it.
Thank you.
But it will happen. Yes. Commissioner Garcia-Leyes?
I just wanted to share that as I've been talking to people, they are, most of the people I've talked to are more interested in consistency and being able to make plans than in, the idea that some days they will drive 10 minutes and other days they will drive 90 minutes to get to a meeting, which is a feeling I share. And we've also discussed the idea that our regular meetings will always be at the same place, and then we'll have forums and other sorts of events that will move around the county.
Commissioner Gonzales?
Thank you. Yes, I know that, off the data for $1 Million Hoods and Advancements Project showing the different spas that are very under-resourced, yet have high incarceration rate, like, Lancaster, Pomona, all the different locations. And since we're thinking of just making one central base so that people have the opportunity to be able to attend these meetings, is there any way that we can get some funding for those coming, over 20 miles or something, assistance with bus or some kind of assistance? Otherwise, these communities are going to get absolutely left out.
Wendy, is this something you can speak to?
It's not something I know the answer to, but it's certainly where I do know where to go get the answer.
Okay.
You're mostly, Commissioner Canales, talking about transportation support.
Right, for the communities that, just as, Commissioner Sean Garcia-Leyes mentioned, the people he's been talking to want a central location and consistency, because I'm sure that it works, for them. And for many of us, it would work for me as well. I'm not going to say it's not. But I'm talking about for those that live in, farther out areas, but yet data shows they're very under-resourced and high incarceration rates. And we could pull up that data from the $1 Million Hoods and Advancement Project, showing the 7 top spas that are that could use some resources just to be able to attend the meetings.
Thank you for that.
I will definitely get an answer for you on that. And that's another part of the reason why we want to make the virtual participation continue to feel really involved and not just like you're watching a video and not involved.
Commissioner Meredith, you're up.
Well, I come from the largest supervisory district in the county, stretching from the east in San Bernardino County to Kern County in the north, and of course up into the high desert, Palmdale, Lancaster, which do have the high incarceration rates, probation rates up there. And many of those people are impoverished and don't have the resources to come down. And in the old commission, at times we would go out and hold a meeting in the various supervisory districts so that we could be actually in the areas that were most impacted, so they didn't feel left out. And I remember being out at Lancaster one time, and it was our first time out there. In fact, Jose Azuna was with me, and we got eaten up because they felt like the redheaded stepchild that nobody paid attention to, and they were shocked to have anybody come out. So I just want to share that we really probably should consider those kind of outreaches and not just virtually.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Merritt. And I definitely agree. I think that we need to have some really strong outreach, Wendy, because even if we plan to host a meeting in someone's local area, we want to make sure that they actually participate, right? So we need to find a way to sort of hear back from people in certain areas and really plan ahead as far as possible to maximize participation. Commissioner Carrillo?
I'm gonna jump on Commissioner Merida's comment there, and you know, I think that for the health of the commission, we shouldn't have the same attendees there every single time. You know, I'm thinking about having a fixed location with a fixed same faces in the room every time, maybe echoing each other's ideas and so on. Where the idea of as to Don and Dolores's point about, you know, Lancaster, Little Rock, Palmdale, or even down south, this idea of hearing other people's opinions and ideas about how we're moving with the commission, I think is very healthy. And I think we should definitely put the public and everyone else, if it's advocates or folks who just need to be heard, you know, consider you know, them as well is very important.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. Any other commissioners want to weigh in before we move on? Just want to offer some assurance around the fact that this is going to be an ongoing conversation. We want to be as responsive and agile and really as flexible as possible, but maybe a phased approach is going to be most appropriate so we can respond to what we're learning and then, you know, move on that based on what we're seeing and hearing from the public. Wendy?
Thank you. And two things. One, we also can continue to use the flexibility of having town halls that are not attended by a full quorum of commissioners, where it's very easy to plan and don't need to be posted in our public meetings that we can hold in the 5th District and other places. And then secondly, I just wanted to be clear that we're expecting that the March meetings will be held at St. Anne's, which is in central Los Angeles. So we'll be, as soon as we confirm that officially, we will post it on our website, but we'll see how that location works for everyone and continue to evaluate other options.
Thank you for that, Wendy. Let's move on to item number 5, where we will hear an update from Chief Probation Officer Adolfo Gonzales on the probation department's involvement with auctioning firearms, And Wendy will explain the POC's role in the board's motion, followed by an update from Chief Gonzales. Please proceed, Wendy.
Thank you. And I want to explain the major reason why this is on the agenda today and thank Chief Gonzales for coming back. So Chief Gonzales provided a pretty significant, in my opinion, update at the last meeting about the department's role. And I think he has some additional information to provide. But at the last meeting, this topic was not on the agenda. So there were some limitations about how far commissioners could go with their questions and the responses. So today we have it fully on the agenda and encourage commissioners to be able to ask questions. So the board motion assigned duties to County Counsel, the CEO's office, the Probation Department, and the Probation Oversight Commission to investigate this process, of which guns were put on an auction website and immediately removed as soon as the executive leadership team found out about it in mid-January. And so I have gone through a number of conversations, both formal and informal, in which the department has provided freely and completely significant information about what the timeline was for the sale of these auctions, how it started. Maybe Chief Gonzales can go over that a little bit again today for those who weren't on the meeting last week, but more importantly about how it was stopped and will be prevented in the future. And in fact, will be prevented not just from the probation department, but throughout the county. So I have been able to follow up with some of the things that Chief Gonzales and Chief Fletcher provided to me, including having a conversation with LA Sheriff's Department about their communication with the department about the eventual disposal of the weapons. And I'm feeling very optimistic about how this investigation, that's the word that's in the motion, is going, how our report will result in an explanation of how this happened and how it will be prevented from happening again. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have after Chief Gonzales speaks, but I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Thank you, Willard. Good afternoon, Commissioners, and welcome to our new Chairwoman, Ms. Jackson, first meeting. I'm excited because we have a new sheriff in town, and the board office put us in contact with the Sheriff's Department, and they were more than eager to help us this time around. And in fact, we just met with them yesterday, along with the Internal Services Bureau, and the Sheriff's Department will be providing the process by which the weapons will be destroyed. And Probation Department is working already to identify the serial numbers and get those into the system, so the weapons can then be taken out of the automated system as destroyed. The meeting yesterday allowed us to meet with the Internal Services Division. There will be working with the vendor. They explained the process they're going to go through, make sure we comply with contracts and grants procedures for the county. As you know, the county procurement usually takes a long time. We're pushing this a very quick process because the sheriffs had some contacts that they put us in touch with that are locally here in Anaheim. ISD will be assisting us in completing all the documentation, all the forms that are required for the destruction of the firearms. And once the paperwork is complete and all those record checks have been entered into the system, we will be coordinating with the vendor for a date and time for the weapons to be destroyed. Once the destruction is completed, we'll verify with the Sheriff's Department, make sure all those data entries are into the automated firearm system so that those records are shown as destroyed weapons. And as far as the timeline, we're hoping that we can get this done, get the data by the end of the week, maybe early next week, and then get the ISD and the procurement with the vendor so we can destroy these weapons within 2 or 3 weeks. So hopefully I can come back next month and report that the weapons are already destroyed. It's a little different process, and we'll explain that at the next meeting once we go through their vendor and see how they actually do the weapon destruction. But again, I want to say thanks to the board for putting it in touch with the new sheriff and his staff. They were more than eager to help us. So I'm excited about that opportunity. And I welcome any questions at this point.
That concludes the presentation, right, Wendy? We can move on to public comment.
Yes, so if you'd like to make public comment, please use the raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen or dial *3 on your phone. Did we have any pre-registered public comment on this item, Janae?
The individual is not online with us.
Okay. If you pre-registered for this and are on the phone, can you please dial *3 on your phone so we can see who you are? But other than that, I don't see any hands raised, Chair Jackson.
All right, if any are raised in the course of commissioner comments, we can revisit those. This was a hot topic last meeting, so I would imagine a couple commissioners have things to say, starting with Commissioner Gonzales.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Yes, I just want to really point out to Supervisor Hilda Solis's office, thank them for catching this, and Chief Gonzales in your report from the last meeting, that once you were notified because you were not aware, that you immediately put a stop to it. And I'm wondering if there's a timeline for the forms process and the destruction of the firearms. And if so, what is that timeline? And I would imagine that once it does take process, you'll be giving updates to our director, to Wendy. Thank you.
Yes, the timeline, like you said, we'll finish hopefully entering into the automated firearm system, our numbers, our serial numbers for each of the weapons. And we have 334 weapons. So obviously that'll take some time. So we're hoping in the next week or two, the vendor will be confirmed, because the contractors have to be done through the Internal Services Division, not through the Sheriff's Department. They just put us in touch with the ISD. They're the ones that are doing the contract with the vendor. Once that's finalized, then they tell me that approximately 2 or 3 weeks, they'll be able to accommodate us. So I'm hoping before the end of the month, we'll have more news to report back, and we'll contact Wendy and make sure we get the information to y'all.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners with comments? Of course, Commissioner Kakani, Vice Chair Kakani.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Just a quick question, Chief. So I think it's fair to say that there was like a huge gap in like information being relayed to you, right? That like you didn't learn of this until a supervisorial district brought it to your attention. Is that right?
Correct.
So I guess the bigger question to me seems like, how do you plan to ensure that things like this don't, I don't know, get lost in the shuffle again?
Well, that's a great question, because what happens is when the previous administration was here, the staff from the Bureau started working on the direction they were given. So they were going forward with that, thinking that's the way they kind of like that was their directive to get it done. So they were working to get it done. And what took so long was, of course, our procurement process. I think what we plan to do going forward is meeting with a lot of deputy directors, make sure that anything that has to do that's controversial like this, that we're all on the same page. In other words, that we're all addressing the concerns. And we have what we call morning huddles every day now. We meet with the deputy directors, bureau chiefs, chief deputies, to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding anything that we're doing. And we've even invited county council to be on those meetings so that we can have the confidentiality, but also to get us some guidance going forward. So that's how I hope to be able to prevent anything from happening again. And the board motion from the board, as you know, will address that. And working with CEO's office and with POC to respond back to the board motion, will address some of that too.
So these morning huddles were not happening before, or just not happening with this level of regularity?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question.
These morning huddles that you're referencing, were they not happening before?
Right. Yeah, the huddle calls were not happening before
Okay, at all.
at all. I don't know what they were doing before. I just started that shortly, a while after I came in.
I'm sorry, when?
I started the morning huddles when I came in, like about a year after I came in. I saw a need to communicate more with the deputy directors. So we started having the morning huddles regularly, every day.
But no one brought this
Unless
to
something
your
happens, we
attention.
can't have a meeting where we schedule it, but we communicate every day.
Okay, but no one communicated this to you prior?
No, from the firearms, because they received their instructions from the previous administration, so the Bureau was going forward, and they didn't really bring it up to us until the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kakani. Chief Gonzales, I had a question. I was wondering, in destroying the guns, what kind of record keeping priorities does the department have? Are you guys going to be tracking all of the devices that are going to be destroyed? Is there going to be any record of that?
Correct. With the assistance of the sheriff's department, we provide all the information to the sheriff's department, and they'll be tracking the weapons that are destroyed, and they'll be labeled as destroyed. So there's a record of all those serial numbers.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other commissioners have final thoughts on this agenda item before we move on? All right, appreciate this discussion. Moving on to agenda item number 6, where we will discuss and take the appropriate action on the probation department's progress on compliance with our December 20th motion, or the December 20th motion from the Board of Supervisors requiring the phase out of OC spray and units housing youth with developmental disabilities, girls, and gender expansive youth at Central, as well as a full phase out plan. The joint OIG, sorry, I'm tripping over my words. The joint OIG and POC report back to the board has been attached to the agenda. Wendy will follow up with Eric Bates to discuss this item.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. And actually, I'm just going to say that this has been the big project of the Probation Oversight Commission over this month, partially because of frequent report backs, but also because of a significant amount of work done by staff and commissioners to track and make sure that the directives are being followed. But I'd actually like to ask Dr. Sarah Gongora to talk about what she's been working on in terms of the tracking of stats, since she's doing it directly, and it makes more sense to have it come from her. So I'll pass it to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Wendy. So we have continued to monitor OC deployments. And over the last few weeks and reaching back to December, we've continued to notice some pretty wide variation of OC deployment from week to week, particularly at Central. Barry J has a lower and more stable deployment pattern in comparison. And for those of you that look at the weekly OC deployment reports attached to the agenda, you may notice that during the week of January 9th, the report we received shows a full week at Barry J with 0 deployments across the whole facility. Regarding probation's reports, some recent analysis of OC reports found discrepancies between the number of deployments reported between those weekly reports and a quarterly phase out report that we've received. So the scope of the issue of the discrepancy is 6 sprays over a 6-month period. Since these reports come to the POC and we analyze them and then share that data publicly, there is really a pressing need to identify and resolve issues in data collection and reporting. We've asked probation for clarification as to which data set is correct, and we are waiting on that response. So in addition to monitoring numbers, POC staff has also been visiting Central Juvenile Hall, specifically to take a closer look at the context of OC deployment. My colleague, Dr. Reynoso, in partnership with the OIG, visits Central to talk to youth regarding their experiences, and I've been making weekly visits to verify housing classifications of all of the units, with an emphasis on understanding the nuances of housing youth with developmental disabilities. I'd just like to close by saying thanks to everyone that's been instrumental in facilitating those visits, including line staff and administration, but of course, most of all, the young people that have been willing to share their experiences with us. So we appreciate you, and thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gongora. Wendy, any?
I was just going to invite Eric if you wanted to make any remarks on behalf of what OIG has discovered during this process.
Yes, thank you, Wendy. I will agree with Wendy that it's been beneficial when this is a joint effort, primarily because of the quick turnaround. It allowed different agencies to address different issues. As you'll notice in the report back, one of our main concerns was that since 2019 in the board's motion regarding phasing out OC spray, that a plan had not been provided. At least that we've seen, a plan had not been provided as ordered by the board. And that phase out had various stages, and the department was, by its own response to the motion, listing the different phases to ultimately have the OC spray phased out. And the initial phase was the training phase. Then there was the restricted stage where only 2 staff were to have OC spray. And then it would go to the secured stage where the OC spray canisters would be in a lockbox. And then ultimately, stage 4 would be the elimination. Based on our conversations with the department, it appears that they're still in the first phase, which is training. They've not even gone to the second or third stage, despite it being such a long period of time since the board ordered this. So we would hope that they would be able to get quickly through the next 2 stages and get to the secured stage where OC spray canisters are in a lockbox and only accessible during extreme emergencies within the next, 180 days, ultimately phased out. So those are our concerns. I know that staffing is an issue relating to training, which then allows them to get to the subsequent stages. But at the end of the day, we're still stuck where we were slightly after the board's motion in 2019 with just the training being provided to the staff. So that's one of our main concerns. And we look forward to speaking with probation more to see what can be done in the immediate future to get through these stages.
Chair Jackson, I'll just wrap up the comments by saying that I want to echo what you heard Dr. Gongora say about the week at Barry J with no spray at all in the facility, and then also pretty drastic reductions in some of the units at Central. There's been ups and downs, but there is evidence of some weeks where there are very few, if any, sprays. And just appreciating what that means for the staff and the youth in those units for figuring out a way to do this without OC spray, and my optimism that this can and will work in the way that the board has instructed.
That's great. I would just ask Adam Patino before we close out this item. In the week that we had no deployment of spray, what do you think happened differently during that period of time?
I certainly, I am unclear. Chief Fletcher is on. I'm unclear what would have contributed to that, other than, you know, hopefully staff working really diligently with our young people.
Thank you for that. Just any insight would be helpful, as if there's something concrete there we'd like to borrow for that, for the permanent plan, perhaps.
So Jackson, I don't know that we can pinpoint exactly a difference in what was happening before. Certainly our staff are committed to working with youth and using de-escalation skills and trying to provide as much programming for the youth in our care to prevent incidents of violence. I think in some of the weeks where we see the OC spray happening, we had a lot of tension between youth and there was an increase in youth on youth violence. We can go back and actually talk to the staff during that time period to see if we can pinpoint something. But at this point, it's really just speculating kind of the continued work that they do every day. And certainly our staff know that the goal is to phase out OC spray across both juvenile halls. Certainly making some progress in terms of the planning at Central, which will impact 5 separate units that are affected by the motion, and then move that throughout both facilities. So our staff are incredibly aware and are committed to working with the youth. But I don't think I can tell you today exactly what difference was made that week that caused no incidents of spray.
Sure, I would imagine that it's maybe tough to pinpoint the reason why that took place, but I would say in the same way that we want to evaluate or investigate when there are issues, we want to investigate situations that are working for us, right? Because we're desperate for solutions, and to the extent that we can interview staff and youth to really find out, to get the backstory into what's happening there, we want to maintain that result. So I think you should go back and dig into the story a little bit so we can find out what's happening.
I'm happy to do that.
Any other comments? Commissioner Gonzales?
Thank you. And excellent suggestions, Commissioner Jackson. Yes, I'm wondering, you said you don't know, what happened that week, but do you know if it was their normal floor staff, the regular assigned shift, or if it was different staff? Do you know that much? And also, if you could, let them know that it was very well, received and noticed. I mean, it's a week, but at least it's a start, right? It's a step. And I also want to thank Sarah for her diligent report and just staying on top of this. I'm really thankful for that. But if you can go back and let them know, since they probably are working and can't be on the calls, and if you could also find out if they're regular assigned shifts or did we have different staff from somewhere else? Thank you.
Absolutely, I'll do both. Thank you. Staff will appreciate your comments.
Yeah, especially there's lots of complaints about us not highlighting their success enough, and that this is something I'm sure they would appreciate if we could do that. Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion then. Let's take these ideas a step farther. I move that we commend the staff at Nydorf who were on duty that week for a job well done and a commitment to the safety of the youth.
I would second that motion.
All right, motion carries. Well, motion does not carry until we get a vote. I'm a bit ahead of myself. I'm excited for this motion. So Wendy, can we get a vote?
Sure, thank you. I'm just going back to my list of commissioners.
I don't want to skip discussion. Is there any discussion? All right, I really am that convincing. Great.
I got some discussion.
Sure.
So Sean, are you expecting like a raise or a plaque or like what are we talking about here other than a pat on the back?
I was just talking about a pat on the back. The most official one that we're empowered to give.
Got it.
I mean, I think it's up to probation leadership to decide what that looks like. I mean, we would certainly like to hear back on how that went, and how that was done, whether by email or maybe by comping lunch or a lunch truck or however you want to go about that. We'd like to hear what happens. Commissioner Meredith?
Well, I think it goes a lot to recognize the effort that's being put forth, and I agree that it'd be nice if something could be done as part of that recognition, you know, the lunch truck or whatever.
All right, Commissioner Carrillo, is that enough discussion before we move on to a vote?
The chair, you tell me.
I think we're good. Let's vote.
Okay, so we are voting on the motion by Commissioner Garcia Lays, and I didn't write down who seconded, Commissioner Meredith, to commend the Barry J. Nydorf staff for the week of 0 sprays. And I will work with Chief Fletcher to figure out how to best communicate that. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. Commissioner Canales?
Yes.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia Lays?
Yes.
Commissioner Kakani? Commissioner Lewis has joined us. Sorry for not recognizing that earlier. Commissioner Lewis, I don't know if you were here for the conversation there. Do you want to vote on this motion?
I literally just joined and was not here for the earlier conversations. My apologies. I was pulled into another meeting.
No problem. Do you want me to list that as you abstaining, or how do you want to vote?
If you could, would I slow things down if I ask for a quick update?
Steve, are you okay with us putting a hold on the vote here in the middle of it?
I think if you're just recapping what the motion is, I think you can do that still before the vote takes place.
Thank you. So after a report from Dr. Gongora about the OC spray and the fact that there was one full week at Barry J. Nydorf with no sprays in the facility, there was a motion by Commissioner Garcia Lays, seconded by Commissioner Meredith, to commend the staff of Barry J. Nydorf for that week of 0 sprays. And that's what we're voting on.
I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Meredith?
Yes.
And Chair Jackson?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes unanimously.
That's great. I feel really good about that activity. Let's move on to agenda item number 7, where we will discuss and take any necessary action on probation's response to the OIG's second report on the DOJ settlement agreement. We heard a report on this last meeting or last month, but a number of commissioners expressed a desire to deeper into the issues and ask questions of the department about the response, in particular to their concerns about reporting and use of force. And so Assistant Inspector General Eric Bates is here to provide insight into the report, and Chief Deputy Adam Bettino will deliver a response along with Director Luis Dominguez. Wendy, I think we will begin with public comment so we can jump into commissioner questions shortly after.
We will, and thank you to the couple of people who have just reminded me that we did not take public comment on the OC spray item. We were going to do it after the presentation there. So I think maybe we should go back to do public comment on the OC spray item, if that's all right with you, and then we can jump into this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so James, do you want to give public comment on OC spray, or would you rather wait for a minute and talk about the DOJ report? We're going to unmute you so you can answer my question.
Am I unmuted now?
Yep.
Terrific. Now I want to make a comment. My comment would be on the OC spray.
Okay, great. Hold on for just a minute while we pull up the timer. And if anyone else would like to give public comment on OC spray, please raise your hand or dial *3 on your phone. And you can begin whenever you like, James.
Terrific, thank you. I am not Bill and Irene's brightest child. They got two other kids who are much smarter than I am. However, I don't understand how a request that goes back to 2019 about OC spray has been so slow in being addressed. And it's just, I'm confused. I am just confused. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas has his hand up.
Hello?
Yes, you can speak.
Okay. Just real quick, I just want to say, appreciations for the pat on the back for the people who work the halls. They work real hard, and a little goes a long way. So a little good job that you guys are giving them. We just appreciate it, and just want to say thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Chair Jackson, I'm not sure if there were other commissioner comments about that topic.
Not that I've seen, but I would invite them to insert comments here. Commissioner Kakani?
Thank you. Sorry about that. I got a little confused after we voted on the motion. Just a question related to the discrepancies, and I know it was shared that you're waiting on a response. Is there like a timeline for when you might receive that response, or who's looking into that response, or what information is needed?
That's Chief Fletcher's team. Chair Jackson, if you want to allow her to answer.
Yes, please, Ms. Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. We do have that information. We are making some corrections. So as Wendy mentioned, or maybe a previous speaker, there were 6 discrepancies over a 6-month period. It appears that 4 of those discrepancies were not counted because as I understand it, the spray did not make contact with the face or skin that it hit a shirt in 4 of the 6. And so I think there was some discrepancy in how we reported those. So we want to make sure that anytime OC is deployed in those situations, that it is counted. And so I do have the 2 other discrepancies, and I will send that to Wendy actually after this call.
Thank you.
So sorry, the 2 other discrepancies were just, do we know why they were there was not this alignment? I understand for the 4 out of the 6, but
right. I think that they were missed, and so those 2 will be included in with that 4 that I mentioned.
Okay. And then I had another question related to the early intervention system that was discussed in the Office of the Inspector General's report on page 4 for folks who are looking at it. So how long has this been in the process of being created to identify kind of whether there are certain probation staff who are using OC spray more often than others? So just trying to get a sense of how long the early intervention system has been in conception or build out stage.
So there has been, and thank you for the question. Also just want to appreciate the staff recognition. Thank you guys so much for doing that. We really appreciate it. Staff really appreciate it. So the early intervention system is something that has been in play for quite some time, in fact, and we sort of moved away from it. So it was a system that was being used in kind of an earlier iteration. What we've done is because it wasn't being utilized as often and as effectively, we've pulled it offline and we're revamping it. And so there's new, and our research folks get into this where they talk about different algorithms that track a few different things. So what it's going to track is it's going to any kind of perceived overuse and it's also going to track underuse. So sort of over use of force or under responsiveness, under use of force, if that makes sense. So trying to gauge how often our folks are responding, and when they do respond, are they responding within policy and as effectively as possible. Now, they will be compared to each other. So part of the calculation is, you know, in a similar situation, are all of our folks kind of responding and reacting with similar levels of force? And then within each of those instances, we'll be able to drill down to get some much better data. We think that will be launched in the spring. Chief Fletcher and I met with the team last week or the week before to get some more specifics on where we are. But of course, you know, there's a resource commitment that is needed. We make sure that all the information is being you know, tracked on a regular basis, so that tool is actually as effective as it can. So that will note as well if there are multiple sprays by staff, and we'll be able to kind of drill down into each of those incidents to provide some better detailed information on what actually occurred inside the incident.
When you say there's like a resource commitment, can you just say more about that? What you mean by
Well, I mean, just like everything else we do, there's a requirement that the data gets entered into our case management system, and then from there, we have to have dedicated resources on the back end to extract and provide support to operations to make sure that things aren't being missed, and that and then our research teams, our systems accountability team, will be developing the tool and then providing resources to make sure that we're able to extract all the information that we want to be extracting and then sharing with the POC, with OIG and others.
So, I mean, spring isn't that far. It's already February. So are you like, is that March, April? Is there a date by which?
I can't commit to a date. Part of the, and the reason I won't do that is that the labor discussions are a huge consideration here. So there's absolutely an impact on labor. Not only, you know, sort of asking our supervisors especially to be doing something differently, but, you know, the way that it really isn't to be used in a punitive manner at all. It's a tool for folks to understand how we're responding, how we're showing up to incidents. But there may be some incidents that do require a referral to internal affairs or some deeper investigation. So taking that into account, we do know for sure that there's labor management implications for sure.
And sorry, so the data that the early intervention system will collect is not already being collected in any other way? Like staff aren't already required to report, document, log in, whatever will ultimately be gathered by this system?
Much of that is, and so it's making sure that we're picking the right elements from the data that is being entered into the system currently. And then there's also, just like with anything, creating some governance around how the data is being entered and making sure that it's being done completely so that we can extract exactly what we need to extract.
And then my last question is related to what the Office of the Inspector General reported. I believe it's on page 8 of the report, which is, you know, I think there's a date, is it February 27th or something like that? The OC spray is supposed to no longer be used in these 5 specified units. And it says, to date, neither the OIG nor the POC have received a draft plan. So I know that you all have done work to, you know, engage staff who are interested in working within these 5 units. Sounds like, I don't know, training is happening, not happening. That part's a little bit unclear to me. So just, do you have a plan that can be shared with the POC and the OIG as it relates to eliminating the use of OC spray, at least in these 5 units?
Sure. So we have actually been doing a lot of planning. We're doing the training currently. So some of the training that we are accomplishing are including handcuffing, de-escalation, how to work with the developmentally delayed population, which are some of the things that we've discussed before. That training is underway. That's going to continue. We had a schedule. There are actually 5 units that the impacted youth are housed in because of overflow of some of those units. And so we are concentrated on making sure that all 5 units will eliminate OC spray at Central by February 27th. We are working to finalize the actual days. So the idea is to kind of spread out the removal of OC spray across those 5 units in a more tiered approach so that not everyone is giving it up on the same day. We're trying to estimate and work with Adam's team on the training to get that calendar squared away to make sure that we have all, if not all, the vast majority of staff completely trained in those topic areas prior to them giving up their OC spray. So we know exactly what staff will be assigned. We've had staff who have stepped forward and actually volunteered to work in those units without OC spray, which is great. So we have approximately 83 or 84 staff that are going to be assigned to those 5 units. So we want to make sure they receive all of the training, that there's no question about that. And then we will be able to provide the exact date that which units will give up spray on which days. And so all of that information, once we have finalized the actual training dates to be completed, then we'll be able to hand over a written plan. But certainly we've had conversations with the POC and the OIG about the process and the training that has been going on.
So then OC spray will or will not be eliminated by February 27th?
For
Or is
those
it just
5,
you're saying a plan will be created by that date?
the 5 units will be without OC spray by February 27th.
Okay, so all of the training will be completed by February 27th, and this tiered approach that you're sharing will also be done by February 27th.
Correct.
Okay, and then I know that the Office of the Inspector General also recommended that there also be a phase out of OC spray within the next 180 days within all units and facilities, kind of in accordance with the 2019 board motion. Have you all started giving some thought to that, or is that on the back burner?
Adam, do you want to speak to some of the historical pieces? And certainly none of it's on the back burner. As soon as we get this done by February 27th, right, we'll learn a lot from the process. And then certainly the goal is to make sure that OC spray is eliminated throughout those 2 juvenile halls. But Adam, can you provide a more?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of the background how we got here, but Chief Fletcher's right. This is not on the back burner. 180 days, it's difficult to tell. I think we have to kind of see how things go after February 27th. So 2019, obvious, and folks are aware of this. 2019, we started training. We asked for volunteers back then. We had enough of a staffing complement where we were focused on training staff unit by unit. That sort of broke up as soon as COVID hit. We were unable to provide training unit by unit, staff grouping by staff grouping, just because our staffing issues started to become really critical in the halls. And so we couldn't rely on, the in-person training. We had to pivot quite a bit. And so we've reinstituted all of that training over the past many months. A lot of folks have been trained. It's been difficult, however, to get a consistent group who are accustomed to working together to come to the training and then be deployed back to the units. So it is certainly something that is delayed. It's a priority to get it done as soon as we possibly can, as safely as we possibly can. We are not issuing spray to the new recruits who are coming through now. So 15 hit the line a couple of weeks ago. 26 will hit the line next week. I'm still waiting on, I'm not exactly clear where those folks will be deployed. There may be somebody on the call who knows exactly where the staff are being assigned, but 26 will be assigned to both halls next week. And then there's another 25 coming right behind that. And then we have an academy starting on February 24th with an additional 20 recruits in it. So none of those folks will be issued OC spray. They need to be trained in decontamination, obviously, because spray still will exist when they get to the line. But that's kind of the first step. And then, as Chief Fletcher mentioned, focusing on those units that were called out in the motion will be the next step, and then we'll reevaluate. All of that training will continue to be spread throughout the institutions to all staff. So we're developing the plans to do that now. We hope that in the months following that we'll be able to chip away and start to phase the spray out across the board.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kakani, and thank you, Chief Deputy Bettino and Fletcher, for your responses. I wanted to ask before we move on, unless any other commissioners have comments, how can we hear from the staff members who are going to be assigned to those units? I know that we don't really have a mechanism for, or we don't really know or have the pre-post evaluation of the training, but I'm definitely interested in getting some direct feedback from them before, this is officially phased out and they're live in the units with no spray. How can we make that happen?
Certainly. So we've had some conversations internally about following up with staff to see, was the training effective, right? Part of that is in a variety of motions. We want to make sure our staff are sufficiently equipped. So I plan on having some town hall meetings with those staff once we get going and they have experienced working in those units without OC spray. Certainly we can talk to them about either having a focus group with several of you or inviting them to a POC meeting to speak about the experience, if that is something that would be acceptable to them and to the POC.
Yeah, I mean, 1,000%. I was thinking something along the lines of a round table prior to going in with maybe not a full group of people, but a core group that you feel is able to give us various perspectives before they go in. But I certainly don't want that to happen after the plan is in effect. It'd be great to hear from them maybe before the fact and after.
Sure, we can talk to them about that. Absolutely.
Okay. And it's objective. It can be a sort of closed setting. It doesn't have to be an open meeting, but we definitely want to hear directly from them and get firsthand input on how they feel about how things are going. Alrighty. Do we have a motion on this item in the forecast, Wendy, or are we good to move on to agenda item number 8?
Nothing that was pre-agendized, no.
Okay, great. I think it's safe to move on to agenda item number 8, where we will hear update from Wendy on the POC's progress towards achieving its or completing its strategic goals, which will include updates on outstanding data requests and sexual misconduct hearings. Wendy?
Actually, I think we're going to go back to number 7, which is the one we skipped. That's where we started and didn't start.
I'm completely thrown off course, to be honest. So if we need to backtrack a little bit, happy to do so. So we are on.
We're going back to
numbers. DOJ settlement presentation. Okay, should I introduce this item again, or are we okay to move into the presentation?
I think you can introduce it again since I was distracted about the end of the OC spray discussion.
For sure. So was I. So happy to revisit that. So we'll discuss and take any necessary action on the Probation Department's response to the Office of Inspector General's second report on the DOJ settlement agreement. We heard the report on this item at the last meeting or last month, but a number of commissioners expressed a desire to dig further into the issues and ask questions on the department about their response or its response, in particular concerns about reporting of use of force. Inspector General Eric Bates is here to provide insight into that report, and Chief Deputy Adam Bettino will deliver a response as well, along with Director Luis Dominguez.
Okay, so where we stopped off before was asking if anyone wanted to make public comment about this issue before we go to commissioner questions. So I don't see anyone with their hands up, but if you'd like to raise your hand to make public comment on the OIG's second report on the DOJ settlement, dial *3 on your phone or click the little raise your hand button. Janae, did we have any previously registered public comment? I don't think so.
Not on this item.
All right, I don't see any hands, Chair Jackson.
Okay, commissioners, any comments or questions from you on this item? Yes, it looks like our Vice Chair Kakani has input.
If it's okay, I'd like to actually make a motion. I think during the last meeting, I had raised some concern around the backlog of cases being reviewed by the first team. I think I had asked for kind of some sort of either report back or kind of documentation on the number of cases, but I just wanted to start by appreciating the transparency that the Office of the Inspector General's second report on the Probation Department's compliance with the Department of Justice settlement agreements on juvenile halls brought around the use of force and probation's reporting of those events. I know I was, and I think others were also troubled by the report's findings that the reporting and the review of use of force incidents didn't comply with the DOJ settlement agreement. And so in an attempt to move forward with a deeper understanding of probation's current processes, I would like to propose the following formal information requests. One being that the Probation Department will provide the Probation Oversight Commission with a start to finish guide of the reporting and review process that happens after a use of force incident has occurred, including expected timelines for those events. And two, for the Probation Department to provide the protocol in written format to the Probation Oversight Commission within 30 calendar days of this request. And really the purpose of this request is to allow the Probation Oversight Commission the opportunity to review each step of the use of force reporting process and to provide meaningful oversight in identifying parts of that process that are working, that still need refining, and that are not working.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kakani. Commissioner Canales, is that you?
I just have a question about the motion. I heard the second part really good, but the first part, Probation Department will provide, what was the first ask?
I said a start to finish guide, basically like a flow chart of the reporting and the review process that happens after a use of force incident has occurred, including expected timelines for those events. So, you know, once a unit supervisor reviews the documentation related to a physical intervention packet, when the interview with the young person happens, when other folks are supposed to fill out the physical intervention packet who are present, like really just understanding all of the steps and when they're supposed to happen and who's supposed to kind of take those steps.
I think that's an excellent motion. If there's no discussion, I would definitely like to second it.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Canales. Any discussion on this motion, fellow commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Carrillo.
So we're looking for this flow chart, which I agree with, but what do we have now? Or is there a policy now? Maybe it's more for probation. Is there some steps that have to be followed after an incident like this?
Yes. So there's a review process that's embedded in our policy, and I'll defer to Deputy Director Dominguez as well. But yes, there is a process that's outlined in policy.
So, Commissioner Kakani, are we asking for that in writing, or are you asking to create one? I want to make sure the motion is, I understand it correctly.
I'm asking them to provide a start to finish guide. So if they have one, provide it. And then, I'm asking that the protocol be provided in written format within 30 days.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Garcia-Leyes.
Yeah, so Commissioner Kakani and I were talking or emailing about this earlier. And the policy should be in there. The policy, I would love to see citations to policy numbers and also any relevant statutes. But things like the DOJ settlement are not going to be in a policy manual. And so there's a larger context, and the flow chart I think is an important idea that goes beyond just what is going to be in the actual policy manuals. And you know, like I was having trouble dealing with or thinking through ideas like the first team review, which is not the first review, is duplicative of which other reviews, and of these reviews, which ones are supervisors who work closely with the people whose actions are being reviewed, and who's more independent. And I got lost. So we decided I would like to see something like a flow chart that goes beyond policy and talks about what actual practice is.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Meredith.
Yeah, I know there's sometimes multiple policies on use of force between the different bureaus and stuff, but what I'd like to see, and I think it's a good point here, is clarity on how the use of force is just reviewed and the timelines, because there are some critical timelines under POBAR and other things that have to be met. But you know, simply who's reviewing it, when they're reviewing it, does it go to the next step, or where's it stop, and what the timelines are. I think the employees would like to know that too, because I think they don't have clarity on it.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Meredith. Does that complete the discussion and we can move on to a vote? It looks like it. Wendy, can you facilitate for us?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kakani, for providing the motion in writing so I can read it to you here. So I'm sorry, except for I just scrolled past the right location. So you gotta give me a second. Okay, so we're voting on a motion by Commissioner Kakani, seconded by Commissioner Gonzales, a formal information request, and that probation will provide the POC a start to finish guide, which she then described as a flow chart of the reporting and review process that happens after a use of force incident has occurred, including expected timelines for those events. And number two, provide the protocol in written format to the POC within 30 calendar days of this request. Is that correct, Commissioner Kakani? Okay, so please unmute yourselves and I'll call the roll. Commissioner Canales?
Aye.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia-Leyes?
Aye.
Commissioner Kakani?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Yes.
So the motion passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair Kakani, for that motion. I will move on to agenda item number 8 and happily repeat it since I am now back on course.
I'm sorry, Chair Jackson, if I may just interject something. On our, relating to the processor first, in our second DOJ report on page 8 for the commissioners that may want to be directed to that, we go into the process. So until the probation department provides the flow chart, which I think would be extremely helpful to everyone, you can refer back to our report and we do list it. Hopefully that wasn't already looked at if it's still not clear, because our goal is to make the process clear. So if it's still not clear, please let me know and we'll work on making it even more clear in our next report. But it is on page 8 of our second report. Sorry for interrupting there. Thank you.
No problem. That was a helpful comment. Thank you. So yeah, moving on to agenda item number 8, where Wendy is going to issue an update on our progress report, an update on our strategic plan, which includes an outstanding data request and sexual misconduct hearings. Wendy?
Yes, thank you. So I'll actually start with the sexual misconduct hearings. The Probation Oversight Commission has an ad hoc subcommittee that is addressing the 300 plus now cases of sexual misconduct against the department over the past decades. inside the juvenile facilities. And the committee has had the opportunity to meet with both survivors and folks who are representing them. And most recently, we staff have been asked by the commission to investigate some opportunities for support systems for victims of sexual misconduct similar to those in these cases. And I'm happy to report that we, in fact, have very tangible answers to report, which we will be providing at a special meeting of the Probation Oversight Commission that I don't think we have officially scheduled yet, but we're aiming for Friday, February 17th. And it will be a presentation in which we're able to discuss the District Attorney's Victims Assistance Fund and the availability of those resources to victims of situations similar to what we're talking about here, as well as to have further discussion about the hearings to be conducted by the Probation Oversight Commission and include survivors and experts and folks who want to provide public testimony with relationship to these events. So I'm excited about the forward progress and also about the willingness of people to participate, especially those who have been personally affected by these issues. And thankful to County Council for being involved in the conversations with us about going forward with the hearings. So I'm hoping all of you will look out in your emails for an invitation to that special meeting and especially participate when we hold the public hearings. So with respect to the outstanding information requests, the department has provided us with the programs and services calendars for the facilities, which is really tremendously important. And it took too long to get the calendars, quite frankly, but we have them now. So I'm very happy about that for a number of reasons. One is that it allows us to effectively conduct our inspections, which, as many of you know, is one of the legal responsibilities or duties of the Probation Oversight Commission. The way it allows us to do that is that we now have this detailed information about which programs and services are provided by facility and even as detailed as by unit. Thankfully, from the extensive information that the department has provided and will provide now going forward on a monthly basis. So to put that very simply, when Dr. Reynoso and her team go in to conduct an inspection and they go into Unit J at one of the facilities, they have on their calendar which community-based organizations should be providing services that day and which probation programs should be being provided that day. And they can check and make sure those programs are actually being provided. That's a big improvement, and we're thankful to have moved forward in that step. The still outstanding information request, which was part of Inspector General Huntsman's specific request to the department, is the monthly intake log. That log is of utmost importance to the research being conducted by the Probation Oversight Commission because it provides crucial information, including racial and ethnic demographics, gender demographics, charges, and the risk scores that are associated with detention. So we are looking forward to compliance on that request as well. We have, I will say, an updated system for the provision of those requests. So the motion, for example, that was just passed, I will be submitting officially into there's an email that's set up specifically for our request that goes through the department. Jessica Gama is still overseeing the provision of the information back and forth as a messenger, but we have a shared filing system in which they are inputting those files. So the process has improved greatly, yet we still have one outstanding request. And that is that's the extent of my report, Chair Jackson.
Thank you, Wendy. Any live or written public comment on this item?
If you'd like to make public comment, please raise your hand or dial *3 on your phone. I don't see any public comment.
Commissioners, anything from you?
We do have one hand that just went up. Chair Jackson, if we can go back just for a second.
Sure.
Daniel, we'll unmute you and put the timer up and you can begin.
Pronouns. I just wanted to say, I think it's crucial to get this data and to get it in a way that doesn't muddy it down. Obviously, I feel like, the time that it took for them to get it to you now is just a way for them to kind of fill in the gaps. And for me, I think we need to be more consistent in like understanding that a lot of these programs that they say are on calendar aren't even going on because of the lack of probation staff or whatever, the excuses for the day. So I just think that it's important to get this data in a fashion that you guys need it, not on their time, but on your time. And, that's very important because you could create a calendar so easily and, just send it to us. But again, are these programs really going on? Is the education really going on? Or what's really going on behind the closed doors that people don't see? So I think it's important to get this quicker than later, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I don't see any other hands raised, Chair Jackson.
Thank you for that. Commissioners, any comments from you or any discussion on this item? Any questions for Wendy? Seeing no hands raised, I think it's fine to move on to the 9th agenda item for the day, which is matters not posted on the agenda, where we're welcome to discuss or place any other items on future meeting agendas for action. Commissioners, anyone want to weigh in on this item? Yes, Commissioner Lewis?
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. I have a question for senior probation staff. If you have a youth that is currently sentenced to SYTF, and that youth is facing a more serious charge, and so he's dual post-dispo and pre-dispo because of his the dual charges, can probation make a determination of where he will be placed based on his safety? Like, in other words, since he's pre-dispo, because he's fighting a more serious charge that could lead to an adult conviction if he loses his fitness hearing, and he's post-dispo also because he's been the more minor charge has already been adjudicated and he's been sentenced to SYTF. What is the policy for where that youth will be housed at, and what is the criteria to make that determination?
Commissioner Lewis, are we talking about somebody who's over the age of 18?
Just a moment, I think for purposes of the Brown Act, I think we can have clarifying questions to Commissioner Lewis to sort out the item, and then you'll have to agendize it and report back on it at a future topic. I just want to make clear, because this item wasn't agendized, though it's totally appropriate to have a discussion about it, I think you'll have to limit your conversation to clarifying the topic and then having it on the next agenda.
Let's say he's both, let's hypothetically say the youth is 18, one is 18 and one is under 18. Let's say there are two youth with similar cases. For instance, in UNW, you have pre-dispo and post-dispo that are under 18 and over 18. And in the SYTF, you have post-dispo that are under 18 and over 18. So in the same units is what I'm saying. So if this person or this kid, this young person has a more serious charge pending and he's going through his fitness hearing, does probation have the leeway to be able to place him in either pre-dispo or post-dispo housing?
Yes, we can make that decision. And then if they're over 18, as you know, right, we could house somebody at the county jail if they met the criteria. But within our juvenile facility, yes, we could decide how we would house them.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lewis, is there a further part of that question that you'd like to put on a future agenda?
No, right now I'm just gathering information for a particular instance that I will bring to the full probation commission, but I just want to understand what are all the factors that are underlying this particular issue, as it's a broader issue that's pressing. So it would definitely be something that will be coming up in the next POC meeting.
Great. That I heard that in what you were saying. So please let us know if there's a way we can articulate that on a future agenda.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. Moving on to agenda item number 10, and thank you for that discussion on matters not posted on the agenda. And this agenda item is dedicated to the public where you're able to address members of the commission on items not on the agenda. Wendy, please facilitate.
Yes, thank you, Chair Jackson. I see one hand raised. Please, we've got a couple hands raised. Please raise your hand by clicking the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen or dial *3 if you're on your phone. And we'll pull up the timer and start the public comment. We'll start with you, Aditi. Aditi Sharekar, mute you and you can begin.
Children's Defense Fund, California. I'm just jumping off of the February meeting for the BSCC, and I want to highlight for the Probation Oversight Commission that once again, Central and Barry J are out of compliance with minimum regulations, with the BSCC board members already predicting that we are barreling toward another unsuitability process. Despite a frankly unbelievable amount of oversight and technical assistance given to the LA halls in the last year, the SEC inspections still found 39 violations near the end of 2022. And to be clear, these violations are currently ongoing. Many of them are all too familiar. Safety checks not being conducted, probation officers lying on paperwork about conducting safety checks, violations of use of force and room confinement regulations. You have heard it all before. I don't need to reiterate how serious these violations are or how absurd it is that LA halls continue to remain out of compliance with the most basic standards. I don't understand how we can keep LA youth caged in these halls for even a minute longer. What is the purpose of oversight when there are never consequences for repeated abuse? Literally, never. There are never consequences. How can we justify keeping halls open when they're incapable of following the most basic regulations? The same cycle occurs over and over again. They're found out of compliance. At the very last minute, they manage to get into compliance, and lo and behold, a few days, weeks, months later, they're right back to being out of compliance again. They cannot meet basic safety regulations. They cannot maintain when they do meet those regulations for a small amount of time. These halls are beyond fixing. There is no coming back from this. There is no reforming this. Please take your obligations as probation oversight commissioners seriously and start to hold them to account. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Daniel. Daniel, give me a second so we can unmute you. Okay.
Hello there, Daniel Biswano again. I think I just wanted to propose, like the Probation Oversight Commission looking into the collaboration between LACO and probation. I think the lack of education for me is very concerning, and it's always due to the lack of staff or, safety concerns and issues, and maybe collaborating on finding new ways and methods to be able to, get these youth education that, that's a necessity while staying in compliance with the safety regulations. The lack of education is there. The youth don't go to school. They stay in the cells and the dorms, all day watching Netflix and all this stuff. And when they get taken out of their homes, it's, a law that they're supposed to go to school, and people could go to jail over this. So probation needs to be held accountable for this as well. They are the parents to these children while they're incarcerated. And regardless of the stigmas associated with people that are incarcerated, these are youth. They need an opportunity and a chance to heal and get better. So maybe looking more into the education part of this, I think is important, because there hasn't been much conversation about it from what I've seen and heard. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Next, we'll go to James Maddox. Okay, James, you can begin.
Terrific. Thank you. Couple of, they were lead-ins, both of those public comments. There is a new book out by Philip K. Howard, and the name of the book is Not Accountable: Rethinking the Constitutionality of Public Employee Unions. And I encourage every member of the commission to pick up the book and read it. It will give you some insight. As many of you may have heard I've said on occasion, it sounds like the tail is wagging the dog. And I think that this is an informative book, well written, and not anecdotal, but supported by a lot of research data and references. The second suggestion for the commission is, I'm not sure if you're functioning under Robert's Rules of Order. If so, I would encourage each of you to get a copy of the most recent Robert's Rules of Order so that you can ensure that you are not being given questionable information. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Ronnie Villeda. Ronnie, we're gonna mute you, and you can begin.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ronaldo Villeda. I'm 25 years old, Executive Director of Hoops for Justice, but I'm here today as a formerly incarcerated community organizer, juvenile justice advocate, incredible messenger working within facilities, as this body continues to oversee the implementation of Youth Justice Reimagined, specifically pertaining to the SYTF components. We need to collectively strive to create as many different pathways and access to a wider range of services for our youth. Not only will this alleviate the burden of limited capacity, but create a wider support system composed of community and credible messengers. The YJR report sets out to reimagine the status quo. In order to do so, we have to let more community partners have a seat at the table. In doing so, we can elevate the standard of care for youth while creating an array of diverse services which meet the individualistic needs of each young person. Continuity of care begins as soon as youth are placed inside of STYF facilities. It's vital to ensure we create an intentional environment for our youth to thrive and flourish. The better results the model can yield to create substantive and effective individual case plans for all youth. In regards to OC spray, I feel bittersweet about the 7 days without deployments. Amazing for my peers who were incarcerated, they got a week off from being sprayed. It's been 4 years since we passed this motion, but we've yet to create a safe alternative to this response. We need to focus on creating and promoting a safe environment where youth truly feel safe. There wouldn't be an issue with punitive responses. The environment, approach, and culture must shift from within, or there will never be room for growth into holistic responses which address root causes instead of reactionary solutions which only cause harm. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ronnie. Next up, we have Josue Pineda. Josue, give me a second here before you start. Okay, let's test your audio, Josue. Can we hear you? Yes, you can begin.
All right, so good afternoon. My name is Josue Pineda. Much like my peer Ronnie just spoke before me. I'm also a community advocate, youth mentor, work with Hoops for Justice. Fortunately, I've had the opportunity to actually be inside DJJ providing direct services to a lot of the youth that are going to be coming home to these STYF or SYTF facilities back in LA. And I think there's two things that I definitely wanted to echo. One, expanding the opportunity for you to provide services from more community-based organizations that are, providing also continuity of care for those leaving DJJ, coming back to their respective counties. I think primarily seeing that there is a big gap that needs to be filled, and unfortunately, there hasn't been too many, I guess, direct service providers that have been offered a seat at the table for us to come here and advocate, not only as folks who have been formerly incarcerated that understand what the services that benefit folks like us look like. I think
Josue, I think we might have lost your connection. Are you still there? I don't think so. Josue, if you want to call back in, please feel free to do so. Thank you for calling in to the meeting. I appreciate it. We'll go to call-in user number 16. Your number's anonymous, so but you're the only call-in user with your hand up, so we'll unmute you.
Okay, thank you for recognition. This is Mel Bailey. Just wanted to say two things. I'm a proud probation employee, and I'm also a proud community activist or advocate. And I just wanted to say we need to really be conscientious and cognizant of using certain words. When we say that kids are being caged, that's so far from the truth. 25 years, I've never seen a child in the cage. And when you say that, or when we say that, it makes them like they're animals. They're not animals. They're children. And anytime anyone uses the word cage, that's the picture you're giving, whether, that's what you think someone else thinks. But I just would ask that we would avoid using that word because they're not animals. And while I receive the comments and everything everybody says, and I respect everybody's opinion, I like to provide a little bit of balance. This morning, a little balance of positivity. This morning, over 70 people gathered together for one of our community advisory committees that we facilitate in the East San Fernando Valley. You had people from Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, El Proyecto del Barrio, Renewed Hope, and Penny Lane, and a bunch of other community-based organizations that came together to collaborate. I would ask again for the commission to consider attending these meetings that probation hosts so that you can see the positive side and it's not just, filled on one side. And that's all. I just want to collaborate. That's the main thing. It's just hashtag collaborate. Let's have a productive and positive meeting where we can walk away with some valuable resources for our respective clients. That's all. You guys have a great day. You all have.
Thank you, Mel. Let's go back to Josue and see if he's back connected, and we can give him a minute of his time back.
Okay, I think I was having some technical difficulties.
We heard you and then you disappeared again.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm having technical difficulties on mine, and I apologize. But yeah, I think I just wanted to echo again, having the opportunity to work with some of these youth that are inside DJJ that are set to come back home. I think expanding the resources that exist, and even having more community-based organizations, having more credible messengers, being a part of the process that are gonna, provide that continuity of care for these youth. I think it's just important that the commission expands their reach, expands the organizations that they are allowing to be a part of these conversations, to have a seat at the table, to be inside these facilities, to provide those direct resources, both inside and upon reentry. Yeah, that's it. I don't want to repeat the first parts that I mentioned, but thank you. And thanks for allowing me to jump back on.
Thank you, Josue. We did have one hand up that was just V, who seems to have put their hand down. But if you want to speak, you're welcome to. And if not, that was the end of public comment. Sure. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So V, we've unmuted you and you can begin speaking, and we'll put the timer back up.
Buenas tardes. Disculpe, ¿no habla español?
Sí,
quiero
cómo
hacer
no.
una
Si quiere hacer sus comentarios en español, yo le traduzco. Espérame un momento. Jennifer, can you put the timer at 4 minutes, please? Puede empezar. Yo le voy a traducir simultáneo, o sea, diga una frase más o menos y yo le traduzco. Ándale.
Sí, gracias.
Okay.
Buenas tardes. Yo
Good
tenía
afternoon.
una pregunta. Tengo un hijo detenido.
I have a question. I have a son who's incarcerated.
Quería preguntar, lo quieren juzgar sin tener pruebas.
They want to raise judgment against him without proof.
Él estuvo detenido en en la juvenil de Silmar y
He
de
was
ahí,
detained at Silmar Juvenile Hall.
de ahí lo trasladaron por otro incidente
And then
al condado.
they transferred him because of an incident to the county.
Ah, no, en el condado no, pero no recuerdo a otro lado, pero ya para una ya grande, él ya
I can't
cumplió,
remember. It was
él
to
ya,
another location, but one with adults.
él ya cumplió 18 años,
He already turned 18 years old.
pero cuando él estuvo en Silmar, yo pedí mucha ayuda para
When he
que
was at Silmar, I asked for a lot of help from him,
para controlar su temperamento
to control his behavior.
y a causa de eso fue el problema y ahora ayer tuvo corte
That was the
y,
cause of the problem. Yesterday he had court.
y lo dijeron que no tenían pruebas, pero lo quieren juzgar.
And
¿Pueden?
they said that they didn't have any proof, but they still wanted to have a judgment against him. Can they do that? ¿Eso es su comentario?
Sí, por favor. Gracias.
I'm going to recommend, Chair Jackson, that we refer this question to me and probation, if that's acceptable to you. Voy a pedir que usted no sé si usted puede leer el chat que le mandan, pero le van a mandar mi teléfono y yo me voy a comunicar con usted para investigar lo que me está diciendo y para comunicar con el departamento también y así podemos investigar lo que está diciendo. ¿Está bien?
Sí, porque también sabe qué, porque también donde fue el incidente no tienen cámaras. Entonces
Okay.
yo digo, tienen que tener cámaras, ¿no?
Okay, vamos a comunicar con usted después de la junta. So I
Sí,
will
muchas gracias.
communicate with her after the meeting, and Chief Fletcher, I'll get in contact with you about the question. Janae, if you can please help to get contact information, I would appreciate it.
Is she able to provide her name, Wendy? Or can
si
you ask
puede-
her name?
Si puede proveer su nombre y teléfono en el chat, así
Sí.
podemos comunicar con usted.
Sí, gracias.
Thank you.
That's the end of public comment, Chair Jackson.
Okay, thank you for that, Wendy. I will say that after hearing public comment, I would definitely, I think I share frustration in some areas and optimism in others, but I do feel very good about how we're going to approach our strategic plan this time around and feel confident that we will be addressing concerns in some way or another. But overall, I do appreciate everyone taking the time to comment. Do we have any final thoughts from commissioners before I adjourn the meeting? Commissioner Canales?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for all the public comment because I know, you get hopeful when you hear positive things, but just to stay on track and still point out, when the positive is happening and not forgetting everything that everyone has been working so hard on all these past years. But I really want to raise the issue of the callers with Hoops for Justice. Our last meeting, I actually brought this program up that they be provided an opportunity to present, to do a panel presentation. I feel that it's only fair that the public knows some of these amazing programs, PICO Youth, Hoops for Justice, that have been attempting to go through probation and, to work with the youth. And because not all youth are going to just thrive towards the same program. I think that we need to look at individual needs. I think that they provide excellent mentorship and programming, and that that society, the public, needs to hear and see who have been trying so hard to also work with youth and are continually having to go through these probation hoops, and what we can do in our part to start getting some of these other programs approved to go in with these youth, the Hoop for Justice, PICO Youth. There's a few more that I can name that have been working very hard, and I think they are incredible assets, definitely have lived experience. And so that is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Canales. And again, rest assured, we actually have plans in the near future to do that very thing and have a presentation on programs and services. We can learn about all the great CBOs and other stakeholders that are doing, great things that we could benefit from collaborating with them on. So that will happen. I will adjourn the meeting at this time. And as a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at LA County POC. To receive reminders about our upcoming meetings, visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email listing. It is now 1:59, 2 on the dot. We're ending early for the first time, and that's pretty impressive. But I thank you for your time today, and I adjourn this meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.